What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the 31st episode. Clock is ticking on that on the presuppositional video that we need to do, the bar that we set ourselves at 40. So maybe somewhere between the 39th and the 40th episode, you're going to see that video finally get posted, and it'll be funny once we actually do. But thank you for everybody for joining. I'm just going to go out and hand it over to Cease because I'm exhausted. I need him to help me wake up, and then we'll just give a little rundown of what we're going to talk about, and then we'll bring our guest in.
All right. So, well, first of all, thanks everyone for joining. Today we're going to be talking about philosophy of mind. We're bringing Tjump, who was on our show once already. A huge fan of what he does and his channel. So everybody should go subscribe to his channel. And we're going to be looking at different views like physicalism, dualism, panpsychism, and idealism, and comparing and contrasting these different views to see which makes more sense and why that's the case. And then we'll see where the conversation takes from there. So
quick plug real quick. I just finished did the God endorse the Old Testament endorse slavery, Josh Bowen, which I'm hoping we're going to have him on here soon. So I just wanted to plug that because it's a really good book. I won't just say that the short answer is yes. You should actually really go read it. It's a really good book. So I wanted to plug that in before we start. But let's go ahead and we'll bring Tjump in. And I don't know, Tjump, if you want to introduce yourself or what you do and your channel and things like that before we start.
I'm Tjump. I'm a professional coffee drinker. I taste different kinds of coffees on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's it. Tjump actually came down to Georgia recently for a debate. That you just streamed that, right, on your channel?
Yeah, I premiered it. I just copied it from the Tart channel. I stole it.
Gotcha. Yeah, so we actually got to talk a little bit in person, which was nice. I drank something that wasn't necessarily coffee, but same kind of concept there. But we had a good time, and we didn't get into a lot of these conversations that I was hoping to get in person. But I'm glad that we have you on, so we can do this now. But Cease, I know you kind of wanted to start this off, and maybe we can just roll from there.
Yeah. So philosophy of mind is probably one of my primary interests right now in philosophy, alongside with phenomenology, and a lot of the arguments that I've heard against physicalism and for these other positions, I haven't found particularly convincing. And I guess what I'm trying to sort of get a better understanding of how to approach these questions, and I was interested in hearing your perspective. Why it is that out of all these worldviews, you find physicalism to make the most sense. And for example, how familiar are you with Berkeley's idealism perspective?
Generally, not like specifically.
Right. I'm just starting to learn more about it now, and how would I say this? Well, I guess we can just get right into it. Like, what is it about these other views that you find is lacking, and about their arguments that you think are problematic?
Well, it's that they're specifically picking out a single phenomenon and then saying that, well, none of the other things we have can explain this phenomenon, therefore it must be fundamental to everything in the universe. So it's like if we take dark matter, for example, and say, well, nothing in science explains dark matter. Materialism doesn't explain dark matter. We have no idea what it is, but it only exists like in this specific locations in the universe. We see its effects as an increased gravitational bend or whatever. That's the phenomenon in certain locations. It's not everywhere. It's in these very particular locations. But then to conclude that, well, because nothing in the current theory can explain it, therefore it must be fundamental to every electron everywhere in the universe, makes absolutely no sense. Like, why would we conclude that this phenomenon that happens in this one particular location is caused by something that exists in every location, rather than just being caused by something that's in that one specific location or an emergent property of the things that exist in those specific locations. The same thing applies to consciousness. So we see consciousness in one place, which is in brains. We have no examples of any consciousness that isn't in a brain. And so there's this one phenomenon in these one very specific locations, and the idealists and the panpsychists are saying that, well, we can't explain what is this, where this is from a materialist standpoint. Materialism can't explain consciousness. Therefore, consciousness must be intrinsic to all electrons, as the panpsychist points out. But it's the exact same confusing statement as saying that dark matter is intrinsic in every electron. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like it only exists, this phenomenon that we're seeing, either consciousness or dark matter, only exists in very specific locations, in very specific conditions, to infer that because, well, we just can't explain it, therefore it's universal in every single electron makes no sense. Like it's much more reasonable to conclude that consciousness is a product of brains and dark matter is a product of something in the location that we actually see the phenomenon of dark matter, rather than to say it's some fundamental thing inherent to every particle in the universe. And the further problem here is that even if we grant that, sure, consciousness is fundamental to every electron, that doesn't solve any of the questions we're asking about consciousness. Like, what is it? Why does it work in brains and other places? Why, when we shock brains, does it seem to affect our consciousness? Why can we cause people to see things if we shock them in the right places? Saying it's fundamental doesn't answer any of these questions, any more so than saying it's an emergent property of material causes that we just don't know yet. Neither of those give us any insight into what's going on. They don't answer the question involved. And furthermore, the arguments that the idealists and panpsychists present, like Mary's room and the rule following argument and all those silly arguments, saying that consciousness is fundamental to every electron also doesn't give us an answer to those arguments either. Does Mary, if she knows every single fact about this secondary intrinsic property of electrons, does her experience of it, she's still going to gain new knowledge if she experiences the color red there. So how does that answer the question any better than just saying it's a material thing? It doesn't. There's nothing that their answer provides to give us any greater insight into consciousness. It's strange that they think that saying it's fundamental in every electron somehow is a solution to anything. Like maybe if it's just a starting point for a hypothesis, they're just going to say, I think it's intrinsic everywhere, therefore some prediction. That would be fine. But somehow concluding that because materialism can't explain a phenomenon, therefore it's intrinsic to everything in the universe, that doesn't follow at all. That's just an argument from ignorance. Like materialism can't explain it, therefore my hypothesis. It doesn't work that way. Of course, they go one step further and they say it's logically impossible for materialism to explain consciousness, but that just changes it from an argument from ignorance to an argument from incredulity. Like, oh, so you can't understand how it could happen, and you take your limited understanding as being an accurate description of all of reality. So your inability to understand how it could be explained naturally or from a materialist standpoint applies to all of reality, therefore it's logically impossible. Like it's ridiculous, and that's most of their arguments follow that exact structure. It's logically impossible, therefore I'm right.
Sure. I actually talked to Cease about that. Is like it seems that a lot of the what would, like, even if I was to concede or grant some problems for physicalism or maybe things we haven't solved or something, right? Even if I was to grant that, it seems to be that's like an addition to their argument when it's really independent from the actual argument that they're presenting. It's not like it's added credit to in any way, but
that is the foundation of all of their arguments, is that materialism can't explain it. Like it's logically impossible for materialism to explain it, therefore my hypothesis. That is every one of their arguments.
Yeah.
So just a quick thing to add for anybody that may not really be too aware of what it is we're talking about. Physicalism is just a position that everything that we can talk about relates to the physical world that exists.
Not quite. Physicalism is the position that the brain and the mind are the same thing. Physicalism is usually specifically referring to the mind. Materialism is usually the larger thing that.
Right. So well, I was thinking that I was going from the more specific point to the larger one, which is ultimately things are made of matter, and that includes consciousness. The dualists, although there is something called property dualism, which I'm a little bit confused about, but substance dualism divides it in two different things. It says that body and mind are separate, and that the problem that arises there is something called the mind-body problem, which is how does something physical interact with something non-physical? How can that actually take place? And there's different ways to sort of approach that question, which I don't find convincing. And then idealism, as far as I understand it, and in some ways panpsychism as well, views mind as being the fundamental thing, that really everything is mind, and what we call physical is really it's sort of the other way around. Like it's what we think of physical is what's emergent, and really it's just an offshoot of this other more fundamental thing. And there, from what the arguments that I've heard against physicalism as to why you can't possibly explain consciousness are of the sort like, there's no mechanistic and physical description you can give to someone who's colorblind to give them the experience of color. Therefore, the conclusion is that there must be something else that's not being captured by the physical description. And my perspective on that, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, is that that's not entirely, they're confusing ontology with epistemology. There's always going to be a gap between the description and the thing itself, the language I use to talk about something, and what a thing actually is, in all cases. So that problem, the fact that there's experience is primary before the description, doesn't suggest that physicalism is ontologically incorrect. It just suggests that we are limited in the way we can talk about these things, and there are subjective and epistemic limitations that basically require experience to happen first. But it doesn't mean that experience is not explainable in physical terms, right? It's there's something else going on there. I don't know. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I'd say it's you said it as confusion epistemology and ontology. Well, I'd say it would be a map in the territory fallacy, where if you draw a map of like a territory of England or whatever, obviously the map is never going to be England. So if you say that, well, because the map can never be England itself, therefore there must be some separate property there outside of the map and the England, like that doesn't make any sense. Like obviously the map could never be England itself. That doesn't mean it's non-physical. It doesn't mean there's a non-physical thing there. It can still just be all physical stuff. It's just that the description is never going to be the thing itself. And so when you have a requirement that, like Mary's room, of saying that your descriptions of redness will never give Mary the experience of redness, and when she does have the experience, she will gain some new knowledge. Well, obviously, like the description is never going to be experience itself. And so if you have a requirement for redness that which is literally a sensation, the description is never going to give you the sensation of redness. And so when you have the sensation itself, that's obviously going to be different than the description of the sensation. So there's nothing surprising about this whatsoever. It's just confusing the map and the territory.
Right. The one, I mean, that makes sense, and I definitely agree with you there. The one criticism of physicalism that kind of makes sense to me is that you said that when we look at brains, we look at consciousness. Is that what you said earlier?
Sort of. It's a specific function process in the brain, not the brain itself. Right.
So I guess what I would say is that because we're operating through consciousness, that is the mode we operate in. I agree that we can infer that consciousness arises from the brain, but we're not looking at consciousness when we look at the brain, because we're operating through it. It would be like saying that we're driving a car while also observing ourselves from the outside of the car. We're using consciousness while we're looking at things. So we're not. You get what I'm saying? Like we can't step outside of the mode that we're in. But again, this doesn't suggest that the mode is non-physical. It just suggests that there are certain limitations to how we can approach these things. How does the idealist deal with the fact that we know by damaging the brain, something about consciousness gets lost?
Well, they say that because matter is a result of consciousness stuff. If you interact with the matter, you are indirectly interacting with the consciousness stuff, which is why it has an effect on your conscious state.
But
That's
doesn't this
Bernardo Kastrup's answer when I asked him that question?
But that retains the mind-body problem, because you're still suggesting that the two things are in some sense different.
Well, no, right? Idealism is a kind of monism. So they're saying everything is just consciousness. So what we see as the material stuff that we're interacting with, it doesn't exist. There's no such thing as material stuff. It's just a figment of our imagination. And because we're interacting with figments of our imagination, it wouldn't be confusing that changing the figments of our imagination would change other parts of our imagination. They're all the same thing. So in the idealist viewpoint, because our material brain is a product of consciousness, messing with that product of consciousness would make sense that could have other impacts on other parts of consciousness.
Sure. Would you formulate that so for, I guess, like a physicalist, you would say every instantiated mental property P, there's a correspondent physical property Q, right? So P just equates to Q in that sense. So would you reverse that in the idealistic sense, where they're going to say any instantiated
conscious state
is, or because for me, my question, I guess, on that is, I guess
you're exactly right. So that you just reflect the argument, and they'd say that any material state is instantiated by a conscious state. And so if you change the material state, then it's going to also change the conscious state that instantiates it.
Sure. And so from that standpoint, if the ideal, say whatever side, of monism, if you're on the idealist or the physicalist, I don't seem to have a problem with having the assumption. It seems that you always have some conjecture you're going to have to make a prediction on, and that's kind of how you move forward. But how do you get off the ground for who is assuming the substance or presupposing that the argument is typically that, well, you just either beg the question when you use certain arguments, but it feels like when the idealist or the physicalist says that, right, you could just use that in reverse. The difference for you, those novel predictions, how do you separate that kind of pulling of the bootstraps, so to speak?
Well, that goes back to what I said in my introduction. Like, if we say there's this thing called consciousness, and it's a phenomenon that only seems to exist in very specific locations in brains, we don't see it in rocks or cameras or anything else. It seems to only exist in brains as far as we can tell. Then it's reasonable to infer that consciousness is a result of the stuff that is in that location that we find it in the brains. And that's a more reasonable position than to infer that this stuff is everywhere and it's only being instantiated in this one location for some very strange reason.
Sure.
To conclude that consciousness is in every electron, or that every electron is made of consciousness, doesn't make a lot of sense. It makes far more sense to say this phenomenon we're experiencing of consciousness is a result of this stuff in that one location that we see it being created, rather than saying it's everywhere, but we only see it in these particular locations.
Unless you had maybe some disembodied mind for them to appeal to, for which we don't, which is why it would ultimately fail in that sense too.
Yeah, like if we had bodies without brains that had consciousness, that would be a much stronger argument for sure.
Sure. Yeah. So essentially, you would, not to ask yourself and be all very pedantic about it, right? But to say, like, you would just be saying that instantial mental property of F, with the correspondent physical property, G or P or Q, whatever variable we'll use, that you can actually infer that, whereas you cannot infer it on the kind of contra positive or whatever, how you'd refer that to.
Yeah, I'd phrase it the easier way. I get rid of all of the predicate calculus because I think it's kind of useless and boring. Sure. Yeah, I just say that it's more reasonable to infer that consciousness is a result of the things that are in the location that the phenomenon is produced, rather than to infer that it's everywhere, but we only see it in particular locations for some unknown reason.
Gotcha. Sure. Sorry, Cease, I didn't mean to jump in there. If we still have something relevant that you want to throw in.
No, you can keep going. I'm actually trying to find this a summary of Berkeley's position.
No worries.
I thought I had it earlier, but
yeah. So I would ask you, just kind of, side note here on the dualism thing. Like, I know you've stated with like invoking the cogito that you don't use it the same way like Descartes did. You probably take more of like a Kierkegaard's, where you divide the X thinks, and that you are the X, kind of that what separates the implications of ontology there. Like, Is that true? Is that kind of the route you take? And then where do you kind of disagree with Descartes? Like, where does his argument to dualism kind of fail along the lines for you?
Yeah, Descartes' argument was that because it's that the I is a soul, and you have this soul thing, because Cartesian dualism was the point of his cogito, was that he was trying to indicate that there is a soul thing. And that was criticized by Bertrand Russell, who said, well, how can you conclude that the I in the I think, therefore I am is a soul and not just a material thing, or not just a dualistic thing, or a combination, or not an idealistic thing of just a consciousness thing? You can't conclude based on the argument what the I is. Descartes was assuming or presupposing that the I was a soul in his own argument, so it was begging the question. And that's the main criticism against Descartes' cogito, is that it's begging the question, because he assumes the I is a soul in addition to the material stuff, and that's a problem. Like, he just saying I think, therefore I am doesn't tell you anything about what you are. You could be a purely material, you could be purely idealistic consciousness, you could be a combination of both, or something else we haven't thought of yet. You have no idea what you are. You could be a brain in the vat, an electrical fart on Venus, whatever. Yeah. There's lots of things you could be, and you can't conclude what you are just based off of the fact you are thinking. But Kierkegaard's approach is to take it as a tautology. He's just saying that the I and the thinking are the same thing. It's not. This isn't a. You're not gaining the knowledge from the syllogism here. It's not an inference that you're saying, I know I exist because I have looked at this argument, followed the premises to the conclusion, and then I've gained knowledge from looking at the argument. Like, no, you gain knowledge because you literally experience it.
Sure.
And the argument is just a description of your experience. So like saying the sky is blue. Like, yeah. That's not an argument. It's just a description of the phenomenon. The same thing applies to I think, therefore I am. It's more just a description that I exist. It's synonymous with that one term, I exist. And you can find on the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, they actually say this in several different locations, that the knowledge from the cogito is non-inferential, and that you don't gain it from the syllogistic form. It's on.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask you if you took.
It's on the page for Descartes' epistemology somewhere.
Yeah, I was actually going to follow up with that, was to say that that's kind of this non-inferential, where you can separate that description with its implications of regarding ontology and whatever it means. But it seems also like, for me, I don't know where you would. I don't want to go down a different path, but it seems to be that regardless of whatever ontology you've presupposed there, or anything, things like your descriptive laws of logic are still going to necessarily follow regardless. But that kind of goes off into a different rabbit hole. So I guess we get into, you kind of entailed that you don't think physicalism is like a necessary truth, but rather that it's contingent. And so that, it'd be fair to say in a possible world, it could be idealistic or dualistic. There's no logical contradiction that you would say there.
Yeah, depending on what your definition of necessary truth is. So the theistic definition is that it's something that's required in all possible worlds. I don't think there is such a thing. So that definition of necessary truth, I think, is just false. I think there could be many different kinds of necessary things that could all ground an entire universe. So there could be a God that created its own universe, and that's the necessary thing in that universe. And there could be a universe with just a quantum particle, my argument and Graham Opie's argument that he totally stole from me. But that there's just a quantum particle, and that is the grounds of that entire universe. And so we have two necessary things with their own universes separately. And so the definition of a necessary thing as being one thing that must exist in all possible worlds, I think, is just false. That's a stupid definition. There could be many different necessary things. There could be a whole bunch of necessary particles like protons, neutrons, hydrogen, atoms, whatever. And those necessary things could build a different necessary thing, a combination of necessary things. And so the combination is a necessary thing. So you have like a cat. You could have a necessary cat or a necessary planet.
That won't entail for you that, everything in that case could lead to, you wouldn't be like a necessitarian at that point, right?
No, I'm not saying like everything in the universe is necessary. I'm saying there's the one initial thing that grounds the entire existence of the universe. I'm calling that the necessary thing. That thing could just be a composite of other necessary things. So you have necessary protons, neutrons, and electrons, and those necessary protons, neutrons, and electrons have a necessary bond that makes them into a cat. And the cat, you have a space cat that is the necessary thing that created the entire universe. You have the magical space cat universe. Then all of the other things post space cat are all contingent things that the space cat could have created in any way it wanted to. Mm-hmm. But the cat itself would be a necessary thing, even though it's a composite of necessary things. So there's lots of different versions of necessary things. I think the theistic idea is very silly.
Okay, yeah. So then I have, because I would want to present a formulated argument for you for like someone that would take an issue to it being contingent. But it seems the way that you define that anyway may evade it in a lot of ways. But I guess the argument might be more related to supervenience, physical anyway. But it says that if it's true that P entails P, that it's clearly a necessary truth. However, if it's a necessary truth, how can physicalism be contingent? After all, it seems equivalent to physicalism. But if the two are equivalent, how can one be necessary and how can the other be contingent? And so I guess it's saying that it's identical to it being necessary, physicalism being just necessarily true and there being a necessary truth since everything is dependent upon that. But I guess yours would probably.
Well, yeah, it's the same kind of a thing as before, confusing the map and the territory. The P, the law of identity, P is P necessarily, is just a description of reality. So reality is first. Reality is the necessary thing. And then the law of identity is just a descriptor of the reality. So the law of identity is contingent on reality, but reality is a necessary thing. So it's always going to be true that P equals P because the necessary thing is itself. And so even though the law is contingent, it's still tied to a necessary thing, just like necessitarianism in a necessitarian sense.
I just want one quick question, because you guys mentioned the cogito earlier. I was talking to someone that claimed that Descartes justified the cogito by referring to God. That's entirely false, right? He tries to make an argument as to sort of reconstruct reality based on this idea that God wouldn't fool us. But he's not using the...
It's a half.
He's not justifying.
So the second part of his cogito is where he tries to justify God. So it's the cogito is his grounds for knowledge, and then he tries to go a step further and says, well, how can we know anything beyond just that I exist? Well, it's because God tells us so. God
right.
is just the sensus divinitatis. So he's partially correct. He's just not as well versed on the argument. So the cogito itself doesn't have anything to do with a God. It's his follow-up to the cogito that is a reference to a God, which is called the Cartesian circle, which is the paradigmatic example of vicious circular reasoning, named Cartesian circle because it's a circular reasoning. It's hilarious.
What do you make of the idea that Descartes was actually a secret atheist and made that approached it a way to try to not get in trouble with the church?
I don't think so at all. I think he was
really?
Hugely religious. Like a lot of his writings are very religious, so I don't think he was atheistic.
Yeah, I just when I read the Meditations at the university, one of my professors alluded that he thought that it may have been a smokescreen, like a way to sort of get his message across and then basically contradict himself without actually being found out. It's a fun theory, even if it's probably, I don't know. But I'm about to send you something in the private chat. I would like to, we can read over it.
Sure. Do you have time to hit one thing real fast before you?
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Cool. I'm sorry. So in regards to I know you mentioned the rule following paradox. I have some things written on it. So basically, the idea is going to be that since that there could be infinite rules that someone could follow, right? Whether it be addition versus quaddition, there's no fact in the world that could tell us that that any given person is following addition or maybe some other set of rules, and it seems to be formed by people to kind of raise the issue that all the physical systems, if they were different in some way, obviously the physicalist is going to account for that being physical differences. They're going to kind of point out that there's an issue there. Like, what would your response be to the rule following paradox in regards to what would be going on between two physical systems?
Yeah, I think the rule following argument goes something like that. There are two brains. One was brought up to do addition, and the other one was brought up to do quaddition, which is just a math that has some error in it. It's just the wrong math of some kind. And if we look at their brain states, they're identical. You can't tell the difference between them at all because all of the neurons are still the exact same neurons, just their association is one is for addition, one is for quaddition. And if both of their brain states are exactly the same and there's no physical difference between them, then for them to have different properties because of Leibniz's law of identity, there has to be some other thing there other than the physical stuff. But that's false. And that's false because neurology is plastic. Like the same neurons can mean different things based on the associations, like when you were brought up. So one neuron could fire in one person's brain and it could be a Spanish word versus one neuron could fire in someone else's brain and it could be an English word, and they're literally saying the same exact words because words are polysemous. I forget what the word is for them. Words that have the exact same sound meaning two different things. So even though the entire structure of the brain could be the same, they could still have completely different meanings because the associations made from neurons during development could be different for each person from the past. So there is a physical difference. The physical difference is just the things they were seeing in the past when those neurons were formed or associated. And so the physical difference being something from their past, even if their brain states may look completely identical. So there is a physical difference, which is not accounted for in the argument, which is the past experience that caused the development of the brain to have that particular shape. You're muted. You're muted, J-Mike.
I do that a lot. So yeah, I kind of have used, or I don't know if I formulated this. I'm sure someone's maybe formulated the similar idea. But yeah, I've kind of used the idea that if you were to look at you could clone yourself, and at T0 you do that, and you're at the exact stance that you have your direct clone. If you were to take you and your clone to two different environments, and then come back at T3, whatever the variable is, it seems to be that you're going to have this. It's going to entail these, whether you would go with the rule following paradox with what maybe they might be doing with, like you said, with language. It seems that they're going to reconvene there's going to be solely different physical changes in the way that maybe their quality experience is just simply based on what they did differently at those times, even though they had kind of the similar memories intact. When they reconvene at T3, would you say that's going to be entailed? I mean, I guess my argument, obviously you're going to say that's entailed physically, but where can the idealist or the dualist even rest? It seems to be that there's nothing that you could hold your hat on to say that there was some other kind of substance or something there to make that difference, when it seems to be all environmentally or all physically predicated.
Yeah, in that example, it wouldn't work for their argument because their argument is that you have two brains that are exactly identical molecule for molecule. So if you cloned yourself and they went off in different directions, then you have different experiences and they have different growth patterns and then neurological patterns. And so they wouldn't be exactly identical particle for particle after there was the split. So I'm going at it from the other direction, saying there are two individual people and they're growing up separate continents or whatever, but the way they're growing up causes the brain to form in the exact same structure. So when one is trying to do addition, every single molecule that lights up is the exact same as when the other one is doing quaddition. And so there doesn't seem to be a physical difference at all between the brains. The problem, and if that was the case, if there is no physical difference and they're exactly identical in every physical way, but they have some different property there, one is doing quaddition and one is doing addition or whatever, then there has to be something in addition to the physical stuff there. But that's not exactly true, because it's not just the physical shape of the brain that is what causes the memories. It's the pattern going on in it. And so the pattern and association and order in which the neurons were built up in the past have been different in the past to lead to the same activation in the present, causing a different conscious experience.
Sure. Okay. Cease.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I didn't want to take over.
So, oh, you can. I sent you something in the private chat, and I'll read it. I don't know if this makes any sense to you, but
You want me to put that up on the screen, Cease, in some
We
format?
cover like the whole screen. It's like 6 paragraphs.
Yeah, I was looking
yeah,
at. We could go premise at a time, but that might be a little too pedantic.
I can just try to read it, and you can tell me if you think this makes any sense. It relates to this idea of Berkeley's primary and secondary properties. And he says, suppose a thing's secondary, premise one, suppose a thing's secondary qualities are caused by its primary qualities. Premise two, a thing's primary qualities are spatial qualities. Conclusion one, therefore, a thing's secondary qualities are caused by its spatial qualities. From premise one and two, premise three, a thing's secondary qualities are not spatial qualities. Therefore, a thing's non-spatial qualities are caused by its spatial properties. Yeah, actually, I don't know if should we even go through this whole thing. I don't really follow this idea of even primary qualities needing to be dependent on mind. Like it seems to me like they're
primary qualities are the physical properties in an object. Secondary qualities are the things that produce sense experience. So if you have a red apple, all of the molecules are the primary qualities and the redness is the secondary quality.
Right.
So the argument doesn't seem to make sense. So if a thing's secondary qualities, like if the redness is somehow a result of the molecules in the apple, which it is, redness is a result of light reflecting off of molecules, then the primary qualities are spatial qualities. Yes, totally agree. Secondary qualities are caused by spatial qualities. Yes. But then the next part doesn't follow.
Right. That's what I was stuck on too.
The primary qualities are spatial qualities and the secondary qualities are also spatial qualities. The fact that they're caused by spatial qualities doesn't mean they're not also spatial qualities. So if they're caused by spatial qualities can cause other spatial qualities, like a domino can knock over another domino. The fact that the first domino was a spatial quality doesn't mean the second one isn't. So that part of the argument doesn't follow.
Okay, yeah, I just want to clarify that because I was stuck on there too. I didn't see how that followed at all. This question has more to do with epistemology and how we can talk about knowledge. One of the comments that I recently was in a conversation with somebody online, and they were trying to suggest that if physicalism is true and everything that we believe and think are a result of brain states that are determined, on what grounds can we suggest that one brain state is superior to another? How do we talk about truth if they're all different arrangements of matter?
By superior, we just mean truth, assuming.
Yeah, I think that was the approach. He said, if it's all brain states, what is it? How do you say that your brain state is special to where you have knowledge and as opposed to my view being true, if it's all predetermined brain states? I don't really understand that criticism.
Well, knowledge is like the truth is if the sentence corresponds to reality. And so if my brain state accurately describes reality, then it's more true than your brain state if it doesn't accurately describe reality. Whether or not I can know my brain state and more accurately describes reality than your brain state is irrelevant. That's a separate question. If you're asking, like, how can I have absolute certainty that mine is knowledge and yours isn't knowledge? Why, I don't need absolute certainty. We don't have absolute certainty in anything, so it's irrelevant. I can just say I'm justified in my conclusion that I have knowledge because I have some way to differentiate imagination from reality, and you don't seem to be able to have that. So I have a methodology that seems to provide justification for the justified true belief criterion of knowledge, whereas yours does not. And so I can inductively infer mine is knowledge where yours isn't, but I can't prove it now with certainty, but I don't need to.
Right. And the fact that the fact that both our brain states is not really the relevant issue. The issue is, how do we approach what it is our brain states are telling us, and how are we justifying what we're claiming about to be true from reality, right?
Yeah, I think that the simplified version of the arguments is the Matt Slick one, where just brain fizz, or the Seitzen-Bruggencate one, where how can brain fizz be knowledge?
Right.
How can brain fizz be truth? And well, it's the exact same way a calculator can be truth. Like the fact that what we're made of doesn't make it any more or less likely to be true. It's just if that string of stuff, whether it's particles or soul stuff, corresponds to reality or not. Like calculators can accurately correspond to reality. Like 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah, that calculators correspond to reality. Calculators can have knowledge, even if they're just fizz. So the what we're made of doesn't make it any more or less likely or impossible to have knowledge. The fact that we're made of fizz as opposed to souls makes no difference one way or the other.
Yeah, which I hope his starts working in some way to get back to my emails for the 5th. He's bailed on me like 4 times when I was a host on the Atheist Roundtable, just have a discussion, and then like 3 times here. He's told me he was sick, so I believe him. But come on, man, make that brain fizz cause you to come and message back at least.
And the fact that we can't. I mean, because I use the calculator example as well, and the reply was, well, how do we determine that the calculator is right? Like, again, we don't need certainty to do that. Like that's what fallibilism is. Like the fact that it could be wrong isn't on its own an issue.
Yeah, I mean,
that makes sense.
We could just check, see if the calculator corresponds to reality. 1 + 1 = 2 on a calculator. We take one rock, take another rock, put them together. 2 rocks. I think it's right. I think the calculator is correct.
There's this really strange sort of dichotomy with religious people where they'll go from accepting complete nonsense without any justification to then, if I can't do this, then I'm going to turn into like a hyper skeptic to where everything is on the same level. Like we can't know anything at all. Nothing is more reasonable than the next thing. It's all complete. What's the word I'm looking for? Like inescapable. I don't know, like super skepticism, like solipsism. I don't know how to even define it. It's just like there is no way to know anything, and it's just like, why would you think it's one or the other?
Yeah, they think that, oh, look, there's a problem in your worldview, a God of the gaps. But God, I can put God in that gap, therefore I have knowledge, and you don't, because gap, I have gap filler, you don't have gap filler.
Yeah, and I mean, what's the difference? They have this frustration with the idea that their concepts were caused or determined. How is it any different than saying, well, God determined this? Like, it's still determined, and it's just an extra assumption you're making that you don't need to be making. And the entire approach to understanding reality, like philosophy doesn't collapse if your God isn't real. Like, if I say, let's meet at 3 at Starbucks, and we meet at 3 at Starbucks, we're capturing something through language about reality. Like we're doing something right because we can observe its results in the world. I don't need to know that I'm not a brain in a vat. I can just say, well, within the possible ontology that I find myself a part of, well, this seems to be working. And like, that's enough.
Yeah, that's the part they never explain, is like, even if we grant that there's 2 kinds of things, like brain fizz of material stuff and souls, how do souls have knowledge? Like, what is the process in which a soul can gain knowledge that material stuff doesn't have? Like, they never explain that. They just say, well, soul is a word that gives me all this good feely stuff. Since it's not limited by physical stuff, it must necessarily be able to do all of the non-physical stuff that we can't explain too, right? Well, no, you can't just assert that. You can just assert there's an unknown natural thing that could do those things. So just saying that, well, physical stuff is really complicated and we don't really understand it. It seems to have limitations. My imaginary soul stuff has no limitations, therefore it can do stuff like free will. even though it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
It's not an
Just-
explanation. We can just insert unknown natural thing and give ourselves free will with an unknown natural law in the exact same way.
And being able to change your mind doesn't suggest free will. Like that was the other completely idiotic thing that this person said was, then why do you even debate if everything is predetermined? Then the idea that you could change someone's mind, he thinks suggests that I believe in some kind of free will. Like, no, the things I might say also count as causes that might, and however you function, it might affect you or might not affect you, but there's no free will involved there.
Yeah, the reason we can be purely deterministic and still have a reason to debate, because I can present to you reasons, and if we're determined, those reasons can have a determined effect on your brain to cause you to change your position. And so I have a reason to present to you information you didn't have before because you could change your position. It's determined to change your position if you have a rational mind, and that's the goal. So even if we're determined, we still have good reason to debate and present new information to people because they're determined to change, hopefully. So I think it'd actually be better to make the argument the other way. You can present all of the rational arguments you want to a flat earther, but they'll never accept the world is round. Therefore, there must be a soul there, because clearly rationality is not determined to change people's minds.
Right. Yeah, I just never understood that approach about brain states. It's like, I don't know. It's just because. And how do I say this? I also don't buy the idea that we're actually even having different brain states. Like we have similar experiences, but because of difference in psychology and how we value evidence, they're looking for something else. It's not like I'm in their brain state, they're experiencing God, and I'm not. They're sort of constructing a reality that they can't justify, and then claiming that they have a different method for knowledge without actually providing that. They're just stating it as such.
Well, they do have a different feeling, because that is the case that when we check out the God helmet research stuff, when they think about God, they do have a sensation that is different than someone who doesn't believe in a God. And so they do have this separate sensation that they can't explain, and then they attribute it to a God. And so they think that this separate sensation, this new intuition that they have, it gives them access to the ultimate truths of reality, when really it's just an intuition like any other.
But there are atheists that have described feelings of a certain what's the word I'm thinking of? Spirit. I mean, I hate the word, but it's of a certain spiritual sense. Like I know I've had certain experiences that felt almost, like out of body, or feeling connected to the world in a different way. I just don't then make supernatural assumptions based on this sort of unique feeling. I don't contextualize it in any kind of bullshit.
Oh yeah,
I think
the
atheists
difference
can.
The difference is that when they think about anything, they have this feeling like, well, they pray to God, like, God, tell me what I should do or whatever. Then they get this feeling when in regards to mundane things, like where to look for their keys or whatever. Whereas an atheist doesn't get that feeling when they're looking for their keys. So yeah, it's the same kind of spiritual feeling you get on certain kinds of drugs, but the religious person feels it all the time when they're asking these kinds of questions, and when they think they have knowledge, they're saying, God gave me this knowledge. I have this reassuring intuition, that special thing. I get it whenever I seek knowledge or seek truth or seek Jesus. And so because they have that added feeling every time they're seeking information, that's the difference between the atheist who doesn't get that same feeling. They can get it occasionally, but they don't get it every time they seek information or every time they pray or whatever. So the consistency of getting that sensation when you're seeking information is the difference between the atheist and the theist, and why it can definitely be compelling if you get this rush of endorphins every time you pray or you think that you're in touch with a God being. Then yeah, I mean, it makes sense that if you can't explain that or you don't understand it, that you're going to attribute it to some kind of magical power.
Right. Yeah. I guess what I would say is that I don't think it's really about brain states, but how you justify those brain states. And I mean, I really like your approach about how do we differentiate between the imaginary and the real. I think it's very disingenuous when, I've talked to theists that will say things like, well, how do we determine that what the scientists are telling us and what and the experiments that they've done has differentiated between the two? How do we know that they're not lying to us? Again, like this turn to paranoid hyperskepticism. It's like, well, we see it in the results that science provides. Like, these are not just words in a book. Like, a lot of what we base our day-to-day life on, the computers we're using, the phones we're using, the medicine we think, like, these are things that don't just appear from thin air. They're a direct result of the work we're doing in science. And the difference with religious claims is that if we choose to, we can analyze the experiments and actually do them ourselves, and talk to experts and have them show what it is that they've done, how they've arrived at those conclusions. Like, there's a way to verify these claims that we don't have in religion.
Yeah, I'd be a little more specific, and I'd say that there is clearly some difference between my imagination and what I'm experiencing. Like, if I imagine a unicorn, I don't see a unicorn. And I don't seem to have any control over the stuff I'm experiencing. I can't lift my TV with my mind. I can't generate gold bricks when I think about it. It seems like the capabilities of my imagination don't extend to me being able to control the world around me. So if I'm able to use my imagination to make accurate predictions about what's going to happen in the world, then that's pretty good evidence that whatever my hypothesis is corresponds to something that exists in the world and not my imagination, because my imagination has no control over the world. But apparently this particular kind of idea does accurately map onto the world. And so it's reasonable to conclude that that idea is representing something that does exist there independent of my mind. And so that's why we can conclude that scientific testable predictions are a good way to differentiate imagination from reality, because we don't have control over the reality we're experiencing with our minds. Yet with certain combinations of methods, we seem to actually gain that control, where we can understand what's going to happen in reality, even though we don't control it with our minds.
And also the scientific approach makes predictions ahead of time rather than sort of post-hoc rationalizations. Like, even when the idealists or the dualists say, hey, our approach can explain X, Y, and Z, it's like, well, you're doing that after the fact. You didn't actually make a prediction and then that prediction came true. You just, claiming that all these phenomena can be explained without, I mean, are you aware of any predictions that these other approaches have made that physicalism hasn't?
Donald Hoffman, I think, has tried to make predictions regarding idealism. He might. I haven't read his book to actually know or looked into it that much detail, but that's like essentially the only one. There isn't really any significant predictions made. They're all just post hoc, saying we can explain all the data. They're all empirically equivalent. Therefore, it's the same, which is not quite how it works.
That doesn't make sense.
It's technically true that you can post hoc explain everything, and that if you started with like idealism, like if every human being in the world, every scientist was an idealist and started doing science and making all the same progress, then yeah, we'd probably all be idealists instead of materialists. It's not like there's a proof that we can disprove one or the other. It's just the fact that everybody starts with their own personal philosophy, and the ones who take their personal philosophy and make progress in the world are considered the more reasonable philosophy. And the ones that are doing that are the materialists, not the idealists. It's clearly possible. It's logically possible for the idealists to do so. They just have to have their idealist perspective and start working in this dim field and then take over a majority. But yeah, it's like there isn't any good anything. It's just pure philosophy. They don't have any philosophy plus application, whereas materialism is all philosophy plus application. That's what we call science, rather than just pure philosophy. And that's why it's the more reasonable position, is because the materialists are the ones who have their philosophy and are doing something with it. The idealists are the ones who just have a nice philosophy and think that it's nicer.
When we had my brother on last time, who's a physicist, he sort of echoed what you just said, which is we have good reasons to believe that we're not going to get a truth just by sitting down and thinking super hard. Like, a lot of it is going out into the world and actually trying to test if these ideas make sense. And the accusation from a lot of idealists is that scientists are bad philosophers. And it's like, I mean, that can be true sometimes, sure. But it's also the case that a lot of philosophers are bad scientists. Like, you don't recognize the gap there, that, you know, you need to provide more than to just say this is potentially the case. Like, provide a justification that actually grounds this in something concrete.
Yeah, I mean, science trumps philosophy. So if you have, even if all scientists are terrible philosophers and they have really ridiculous philosophies, but they're taking those philosophies and doing work in the reality and building computers and spaceships and the Large Hadron Collider, they win. Like, I don't care how good, how pretty you think your philosophy is.
Even if they're a bunch of Jay Dyers?
Yeah, exactly. Like, to quote Richard Feynman, doesn't matter if a theory, doesn't matter how beautiful it is, doesn't matter what the name of the guy who did it is, doesn't matter what his accolades are. If it doesn't conform to experiment, it's wrong. Like, the philosophy just doesn't matter. It's like everyone has a philosophy. It's the people who take that philosophy and do something with it who really get a say, not the ones who just sit around and think about what the best philosophy is.
What do you say about this idea of the replication crisis in science? This idea that somehow this puts the idea of experimentation and under attack. That how much are you aware of this so-called crisis?
Yeah, there is several different versions. One is the soft science version, which is a huge crisis. Essentially, none of it's reproducible at all. And there's also a hard science one where reproducing more rigorous hard science tests has also been more difficult than expected. There's still a significant difference between the two. It's easier to produce things like results in the Large Hadron Collider and the LIGO gravitational wave things. Like, those are repeatable pretty consistently anywhere in the world. But there is definitely, it is very hard to get the same conditions in doing a repeatable experiment. And that has shown that many of the things, especially considered in like psychology and the soft sciences, are not as supported as we once thought they were. And that's definitely true. I mean, I don't really consider the soft sciences very reliable in the first place, but it is definitely a thing that they have been shown to be not as reliable as that we thought they were. And that is a big issue that we need to try to overcome and try to make them more reliable as much as possible by having more rigorous testing standards and having journals that publish negative results, which they don't do. They mostly publish positive results. And so you have a positive bias in the papers, and no one really cares to reproduce other people's studies unless it gets tons and tons of citations and is going to win a Nobel Prize and they want to debunk it or whatever. So most experiments don't get tested, which is also a problem. And so there's lots of things in science we need to do to improve the standard of testing, that most of which you don't have the resources to do yet. But as we gain technologically in the future, the reliability will go up significantly as we are able to afford to test them more rigorously. And so I'm not too worried about it. I think it's just obviously the case that we've reached a point where we can realize the faults in our system and we're going to make them better in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't like the approach from theists when, you know, they'll look at the replication crisis and say, see, like, you guys have faith in science the way that we have faith in religion. Like, they make this completely backwards move to try to diminish, you know, or say it's the same thing. Yeah. Or, you know, you go off of the testimony of scientists as opposed to the testimony of religious people. It's the same thing. It's like, no, It's not the testimony. It's the actual work being done that can be shown.
It seems to be weird, like, if you were to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like, if we're just to agree that on the level of like an abductive assessment to where you get maybe to a hypothesis, like, to take that as truth and to say that's truth would be faith, right? I would say that to say it's more likely that Jesus resurrected, for me, that's clearly faith. If you were to say, like, whatever prediction I made is true in virtue of me not having like a testable prediction in the future, well, then yeah, I might agree with you. But I think that's the difference, right? The difference is that in virtue of mine, there's an actual inductive measurement. There's actual ways that I don't know, non-inductive evidence that we're going to apply here. So it seems to be that's always like where you start, right? It's like they're just starting from an abductive assessment. That's really all it can tell you. Whereas any other form is actually going to move past that.
Yeah, they definitely make a false equivalence between like scientific standards and religious standards of saying, well, you just trust the testimony of experts in the field who spent years researching this, as opposed to the testimony of a bunch of farm herders from 2,000 years ago. Like, yeah, there's a reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I always use the biology book example when someone's like, well, you just take what you read out of there. I'm like, well, no, because like looking at allele frequency change in a population, like I can show you like ironically, I can show you a sexually isolated group of Amish people that have a higher allele for polydactylism, right? And so like we can make the prediction. I can show you that no, there are these frequencies, like, whether what level you want to take that to speciation or whatever. I can maybe show you polyploidy or something like that to convince them there. But even then, it's like I can show you. I don't have to just read the book and have you accept the words on the page. Like that's the difference, is that it goes beyond just what the words on the page. I could show you this in an ironic, sexually isolated religious group, So.
Yeah, but scientists were wrong. Like Newton got it wrong at one point, and Galileo got it wrong, and there were these transitions, and the consensus of experts got it wrong occasionally. But then we compare it to like the Bible, which gets it wrong on pretty much every single line, and like somehow they don't see the comparison of saying that the consensus of experts, which have gotten the most right of any standard throughout all of history, is more reliable than a book that gets pretty much every sentence wrong, that you have to interpret in the most vague way possible to make it fit reality. Sure. It's again just the same kind of false equivalence of comparing the testimony of experts in the field who also have background information that we may or may not test. Even if we don't test it, they're still experts, so it's still better than the testimony of a bunch of goat herders from.
So would you say if their book gave like some way that we could devise an elixir or some potion, we could live longer or something like that, right? And would you? Because it seems to me like that's what I need. Science is going to give me a science of medicine and make my grandma live longer. Where it's like I'm not getting these magical elixirs out of the religious text that's gonna to provide the same kind of.
Well, you're supposed to not wash your hands, and you got to cast the demons out in the pigs, and that's how you survive longer. That's the Bible strategy.
Except Mark 16:9-20, and you can just handle the deadly snakes and drink the poisons and not recognize it's a known forgery. But yeah, no.
You got those 900 years. You're gonna live for 900 years, just like Noah did.
It becomes hard.
I wouldn't. Eternity, let alone 900 years, does not sound enjoyable in my perspective.
No, definitely not. It becomes difficult too.
I want to live forever. I gotta be immortal. Immortality sounds great.
Better man.
Do you really?
Yes, like it's so easy. Like all you have to do is like erase your memory every 100 years or whatever. Like it'd be fun forever. Like I don't get why people think this would not be a fun thing to live forever.
What if it was a contingent property that you erase your memory and now you become someone that wants to end your life, right? You're no longer Tom, and now you have this desire that you don't want to live for. Now you become James.
I wouldn't rewrite my entire brain. So it's like I would watch or play a video game that I really enjoy, and then like 6 months later I just forget about it and then replay it and re-enjoy it. So I kind of like do that already, where I play a video game or watch a movie and I really enjoy it, and then spend enough time not watching, I can rewatch it again and re-enjoy it again. So there's not really a big issue with saying you can forget particular experiences and then re-experience those things again. Like that shouldn't be a problem at all. Like obviously I wouldn't erase my entire memory, just the specific parts to allow me to re-enjoy other things. So there shouldn't be too hard to enjoy eternity.
Sure. It seems like you use a lot of those arguments in the sense of that, like from the, I can't remember who it is the utopian, like best possible world type of
Leibniz.
I don't know if it's Leibniz. No, I want to say it's somebody else. If someone that you've mentioned has a similar moral philosophy that you've kind of taken in a different direction, something's utopia.
Oh, Nozick, Robert Nozick's utopian idea of free travel between cities, something like that.
Do you think that's a good?
There's also John Rawls' Veil of Ignorance. Those are the two.
Do you think that looking at those types of issues, like I know the last time you were on, you've kind of said you threw away like the aughts, so to speak, and then when you kind of look at it in this way, do you think that's the best way to look at it, to get around the, I guess what you would call the pragmatic limitations in certain aspects, to look at it from just extrapolating it to its what that best possible world would look like in order to potentially get there? Or like, is that the purpose of that? Or maybe that doesn't make sense to you, but
yeah, I mean, like to have an objective standard, it has to be not tied to any subjective pragmatic usages. So if you make an objective morality based off of what it would be best for us to do in this situation on this planet, like obviously that's a contradiction. You can't base an objective morality in what would be best for us to subjectively do in this particular planet. To have an objective morality, you'd have to have a model that would be applied to all possible worlds, essentially. And then you would have to reverse engineer how we could apply that in today's society. So you have to start with the objective standard that applies to all possible worlds. Like in my model, that's the best of all possible worlds thing. And then reverse engineer how to make it pragmatic. If you're starting with the pragmatic thing of trying to figure out what we should do today, then you're starting with a inherently subjective morality, and you can't get an objective morality from that. It makes no sense.
Right. Yeah. It becomes hard sometimes to tell when a religious person is trolling or not, like when they're actually providing a real argument, or when they're either that delusional or trolling. Like when I watched your video about the guy trying to say that colors proved God, that was just shocking.
Yep. Colors prove Jesus, shapes prove God.
Yeah, I thought that was funny because it's like I was always bad with the blocks as a kid and putting them in the thing. So it's like maybe that's why I never believed in God, because I couldn't get the shapes and the colors right.
I actually tend to think that they're always genuine. Like I really don't care about people's motive. If they're just completely lying or trolling or whatever, I'm fine with it. It makes no difference to their argument. I just take their argument at face value. But I think that I pretty much tend to think that all theists are being serious. Most of the time is that they just haven't thought through their arguments enough to make them as coherent as possible. So they're just trying a whole bunch of different phrasings to express their feelings, which, I mean, I do it too. Like I do it in debates when I have never had a debate on a topic before. I'm essentially experimenting with different combinations of words to see if I can express my position better. And then it takes me a while of doing that before I can really start to articulate it in a very clear sense to make a point that makes sense to everybody. And so most of those cases where it's hard to tell if a theist is being honest or not, I usually tend to interpret it as them just not having the skills to be able to express it in a coherent way, and they're just trying to do the best that they can, kind of a thing.
Sure. Some people are just dyslexic and will say their exact point backwards, and not even. I do that a lot. So, I try to at least understand that part, that not everybody's brain works as smoothly as others. Or as when I saw you debate Samuel in Georgia, he was kind of like, he did that, you slow down, you talk too fast kind of thing. It's like, well, some people will get it out quick and understand it, some people just don't. So
I talked to someone yesterday that says something like, you can verify God the way you can verify science, because if you pray to God for long enough, he'll answer your prayers. Like, what? Like, how do you?
Can I pray to science? Does that work? I'll try it. Pray to science.
Yeah, it's like
it's just ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and I would argue too that those differences too, right? It's like leaps right back to physicalism. We have completely different physical systems, and that's why maybe you process things so damn quickly, Tjump, and I might have to take a little longer or something like that. But yeah.
Just to clarify again, because the idealist will scream at you for this all day. Physicalism is specifically just the position that the mind and the brain are the same. Materialism is the position that everything is physical.
Sure.
Confusing, but just to try and prevent the idealist from screaming at you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, go ahead before you go. I just had some questions in the chat that I'll pull up, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. Are you a reductive physicalist or a non-reductive physicalist?
That was actually the question I'm pulling up.
I don't take a position on it one way or the other. Like, what's your position on it?
I'm a non-reductive physicalist, because I, only sense that, like I was saying earlier, you can't reduce, the thing itself from the description. Like, I still think it's all physical. I just think that there's no description that's gonna get you to what the experience is. And so, from my understanding, reductive physicalists just say that the description is the whole thing that's needed. Like, you look at a brain, there's consciousness, that's it. And to me, that's a little bit lacking.
Just
So
say
I
it right
think-
to my face, why don't you, Cease? We're only
Yeah, no, right. I mean, I think
battle we got to get out between us the reductive, unreductive, like boring argument that probably no one wants to hear, but we really like to.
we gotta have it. Yeah, no, because I found that the paper. What's it like to be a bat, where he talks. Who wrote that? Nagel, right? Where he talks about how even if we understood everything about the makeup of a bat and how it functions physically, that's not going to give us a subjective experience of the bat. So you can't reduce the experience to the physical description. Okay, fine. Like that's not a problem. That's an epistemic issue, not an ontological issue. There we go. Like it's not. I don't know why people think that it's like a defeater for physicalism.
Yeah, so none of those would be attractive for you to commit on, Tom, to say I can reduce that into some way, or you just like you said earlier, it's just not something you care to.
It's just not something I care about. It's just I don't think it's interesting to try and impose some kind of ontology on the fundamental nature of reality based on whether it's reducible or something. I don't like. Reality is reality. It's physical stuff as far as we can tell. There could be non-physical stuff. I don't know, maybe, but we just don't have any evidence for that. How it works, we don't have any evidence for that either. We have evidence that there are electrons and protons and neutrons, and they're physical, and they're in our brains, and that's all we got.
Well, sure, this would be kind of similar to the objection you met with idealists. This would be just in reference to reducing qualia. So not necessarily like any other stuff. I think you could necessarily, maybe not, but I think you could be a reductive physicalist in how you would reduce qualia or something, but maybe.
Nope, I'm just going to say I'm going to wait for the evidence. Until then, I don't care. So I think that either one's fine. I don't care. I'm going to wait for the evidence. We don't have any evidence either way. It's just a bunch of armchair philosophy stuff.
Yeah, sure. If anyone does care, you can watch the where me and Cease finally duke it out for that, and maybe that'll be interesting or it won't. Another question I got real quick. Can you ask Tjump if he adheres to a correspondence theory of truth? You might get a similar answer depending on.
Truth is that which corresponds to reality. Yep.
Yep, that pretty much seemed to be what you had already had said. And then, Cease, I don't know if you have any question you wanted to ask up before I put up the other one.
Well, there's a question for me here that I don't really fully understand. What do you offer in replacement of Ingamo? The idea, I don't know what that means.
The image of God. It's like the.
What do I offer?
I imagine it's the same as the Descartes. What's or not the sensus divinitatis kind of thing.
What I offer in replacement of God, is that?
Yeah, the image of God. I don't know what he means.
Yeah, I don't know what he means by that.
All right, do you want me to move on, or we can come back to that? Or
if he wants to elaborate on what it is he's asking, because I'm not clear that I understand the question.
Yeah, elucidate for Cease, and we'll get back to it. How does physicalism explain collapse of quantum waves? We've kind of been over this.
There are tons of ways that explains that. De Broglie pilot wave theory says it's literally just a wave that collapses. There's lots of the multiverse says it collapses into different multiverses. That's the mini worlds. The multiverse says it differently, but yeah, there's lots of different ways. All different interpretations of quantum mechanics are all physical. They're all material. None of them are actually dualistic in the consciousness sense. They have particles have dual properties with particles and waves, but none of that is dualism in the philosophical sense of some kind of consciousness. They're all physical material. Every single one of the quantum mechanical interpretations are all materialistic.
Yeah.
And also, it's also false to say that quantum mechanics looks at the universe in non-deterministic ways. I think that's a misconception. Like there are aspects of when we're looking at a particle, we can't know all aspects of it. I think it's something like if you know its position,
momentum and location.
Right. So if you know one, you don't know the other. But that doesn't suggest anything non-determined. It just,
I would disagree there. So the poll on the recent attitudes in quantum mechanics from all of the polls of the quantum mechanical field say that most physicists do believe there is some essence of randomness in the universe and that it's non-deterministic. There is some randomness thing there. They really believe
But
it
isn't-
is. Yep.
But even the randomness, because I agree with that.
Yeah, they don't think it's just a epistemic randomness where there's some fundamental determined thing that we just don't know about yet. They think there is really an essence of randomness that's really there.
Oh, of things that just happen without any kind of explanation.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, I learned something new today.
See if I can find it. Physics.
I was trying to think. Did we ask did you ask your brother that on one of the shows?
A snapshot of foundational attitudes towards quantum mechanics.
I thought I had asked him and he had given a different answer, but maybe I didn't.
I can't remember. It was really far back. We'll have to have him. I would love to have CT Jump and him have a conversation as well. And
yeah, me too, for sure.
Just to kind of bounce those ideas. He's not a like physicist per se, right? But he's a professor in it, so he's an educator in it.
He actually did work for NASA and did tests and he did experiments and stuff. So
I didn't want to misinterpret the right term or title.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
okay, here it is. Question number 1: what is your opinion on the randomness of individual quantum events, such as the decay of radioactive atoms? The randomness is only apparent, 9%. There is a hidden determinism, 0%. The randomness is irreducible, 48%. Randomness is a fundamental concept of nature, 64%.
Wow, that's crazy.
Apparently, John. I don't think John was listening to you. Do you, John? You said exactly. Wave function collapse is not physical; it's mental. Thank you.
Observation has nothing to do with the mind. Observation has to do with the sensor. A sensor is purely physical. All collapses are physical. In this exact same study, they actually asked that question, and the percent of physicists who are whatever that is, forget which one it is, the Wigner von Neumann hypothesis is single-digit percentages. So there's only single-digit percentages of physicists who think that consciousness has anything to do with collapse. No one takes it seriously. Consciousness.
You got any more questions?
Well, I just
found it.
Tell Spencer not to come in, and you can
wait,
use.
1 second. So this is the question number 10, the exact same survey. Is about the collapse, the observer, and the collapse of a quantum system and how it happens. The wave function is collapsed by consciousness is 6%. 6% of physicists think that has anything to do with consciousness.
Right. Yeah, we went over that to some degree when I had my brother on the misconceptions as far as the role of consciousness in this phenomena. This is something that's been debunked for quite a while now.
Von Wigner himself rejected it and said he was mistaken for applying the quantum features to the macro level. Like, it's on the wiki, you could find his actual on the Wigner von Neumann hypothesis that consciousness causes collapse. It literally says Wigner admitted he was wrong to even try this in his own documented theory, which is the consciousness collapse theory. So
I want to clarify something. Because, so he wrote appeal to authority.
Yeah, I was gonna pull that up too because I just wanted him to just
jump
on that real quick.
Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy fallacies number 9: appeal to authority is only fallacious if it's not a true authority. These guys are true authorities, so it's not fallacious.
Yeah, we're also not saying that it's true just because X amount of people say it is. We say that we trust what they're saying because that's where the evidence points to.
Yes, the vast majority of people who study this and know more about it than anybody else in the world say you're wrong. You're wrong.
Yeah, but not because it's dumb.
Just because they say so. Just because they say so, you're wrong. I'm happy with that.
You're happy with that? Yeah, I would go a little bit farther than that, but yeah, that's fine.
And Leo, I asked it earlier. He did say yes to correspondence theory of truth. And then Josh, if your question is really long, I'm not gonna give Tjump a 4-question or 4-comment long thing unless that he really wants to do that. But if you can fit it in one thing that I can post that I can go in Discord, I have no problem with that. Just don't want to be moving around applications right now. But anyway, yeah, Cease, if you have anything else or if anybody else has any questions, we could conclude it here or anything like that. I think we hit about an hour and 30. I don't think that was a good conversation, but up to you guys.
I always like having you on, Tjump. I really love what you do. So
Thanks, guys. Always fun.
Yeah, man.
I watched your conversation with the panpsychist, and while that was kind of a dumpster fire of a situation, I definitely I love how he was saying that you weren't using the terms right, or you didn't understand the philosophy, and then you were just like completely massacring. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So everybody go to Tjump's channel and watch what he does.
Yeah, and I still got kind of a bone to pick with Tjump, but it's also my fault because we were supposed to rock out and jam, but I think I forgot to hit you up before you left. So
I actually went to a coffee shop, met 3 ladies, and spent the entire day with them. So I kind of blew you off. That's totally my fault.
that's hey man, I totally understand that. I would in my state of the world would probably do the same thing. So, but yeah, hey, if anything, we're I wanted to maybe we can do a I don't know. We need to collab somehow musically on something, or maybe we just do like a versus thing and we try to learn a song and see who can get it quickest. And then
that'd be cool. Yeah, did you see my guitar thingy? Where I did that in like a minute. I
saw Eugene's bag of tricks. I was just like, that's something I remember pulling up the guitar profile when I was a kid, and just shutting my computer and being like, no, I'm not doing that today. Never.
Yeah. When I come down there, I'll bring my keyboard and we can all do something.
No, Cease, you got to get us something in Pennsylvania. You got to find some secular groups there, and we can all fly up to Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I've been looking. It's a little hard to find anything going on right now where I'm at because of the COVID. Everything is like shut down still. But I've been looking, and hopefully I can find something, and I'll let you know as soon as I do because that'd be great.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you, Charlie. Thank you, everybody. Mark, Josh, everybody in the comments. Appreciate it. We will see you guys next time. This is the part.
Shout out to Charlie.
What's that?
Oh, I was going to shout out to Charlie. I'm always glad that she's in.
So this is the part where I fumbled to find the
buttons. Yeah,
the actual buttons themselves for it. And I will end off on. I guess I'll end off on this one here. All right, guys. Peace out, and
thanks, everyone.
Later.
See the contradiction there? It's self-refuting.
I can actually show you where that's wrong, if you'd like, real fast. Like, I don't want to bark up the wrong tree or anything, but a picture's worth 1,000 words, and a penny saved is a penny.
What is wrong?
Well, hold on. So you're comparing apples to oranges. I just want to say that, do unto others as you would do to yourself, and you don't want to count your chickens before they hatch. I don't want to cry over. Hold on, real fast. I don't want to cry over spilt milk. I also don't want to give up my day job or put all my eggs in one basket. But to give a taste of your own medicine.
Okay,
hold on, I'm not done.
Sandy, mute this freaking talking point spewing. He's a troll. Kick him out.
It's a piece of cake. He's
literally reading off a bunch of
let the cat out of the bag. You're on once in a blue moon. I just want to play the devil's advocate for saving for a rainy day.
Standing, pay attention.
But listen. The early bird gets the worm because the elephant's in the room. There's other fish in the sea. There's no such thing as a free lunch. You can't throw caution to the wind, and you can't have your cake and eat it too. Do you understand that, John?
Okay,
so what I want to say is that there's no snowball chance in hell.
Okay, here I muted him real quick. So Chris, unmute yourself.
He's reading a list for the last 2 minutes, bro. He's reading a list of
I thought he was reading a list
of catchphrases. He's doing nothing but catchphrases. Kick him out.
Yeah, so Chris, are you here to troll, or are you interested in actually responding to the arguments, claims? I'm going to unmute you. So convince us you're not here to troll and you're here to actually have a cordial discussion. Just a second.
No. Listen. So you didn't let me get there. Like, listen. So I'll get to the point. I'm sorry.
He's gonna waste our time.
No, I'm not. The ball is in your court. What I'm trying to say is you don't want to spill the beans because
said that.
Kick him out.
Yeah.
Idiot.